guys, well, first video of the new year. Incidentally, I'm actually in the midst of writing and editing and filming another video, which I had planned to make my first video of this new year, but I thought of this idea and then I decided to do this instead. Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd is my favorite musical group of all time. It's been a band. They're a band that has been with me since I don't know when, since I was like a teenager. I have a lot of their albums on CD, and I've even bought a few on iTunes. But for the most part, I like to buy their albums on CD because you know me, I'm a sucker for physical media. Some albums I like more than others. Like I'm not going to name any. But I'm just gonna name five of my favorites, my top 5 favorite Pink Floyd albums. Now, this is by no means a worst to best list, nor is it by any means a suggestion list that you should like a starter pack or anything, like the albums that you should buy day one if you want to get into Pink Floyd. But they're just my personal favorites. I'm not a professional musical critic, or even an amateur one. I hardly ever mention my musical tastes. But in any case, let's get started. Coming in at number 5, we have The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Now, this album was released in 1967. It was the first album that Pink Floyd ever produced, ever made. They didn't produce it. I'll get to that in a minute. It actually has a very different sound from some of their later albums that they would make in the 70s. It sounds more like the Beatles than anything else. It's got more of a psychedelic rock kind of feel. My favorite track off of this album is Interstellar Overdrive, which is a nice little jam song. The reason it's my favorite is because it's a jam song, and I like those jam tunes like Fish and the Grateful Dead. I'm a sucker for that kind of music too. If you think about it, this song it clocks in at almost 10 minutes. I think I said that before, but anyway, it clocks in at almost 10 minutes, and that should be indicative of what Pink Floyd would later do. It would later do as their sound evolved from psychedelic rock to progressive rock, because progressive rock is all about those 10 or 20 minute tunes like Genesis and Jethro Tull and Rush and all them. And there's a really neat bit towards the end where the sound bounces back and forth from the right sound channel to the left sound channel. If you'll pardon the expression, it sounds like the music, the song, is quite literally, going from one ear, going into one ear and out the other. It's crazy. Also, the song Interstellar Overdrive, that is, the song was a staple of their live sets. Oh, I forgot to mention, it was only one of 2 albums that they made with Syd Barrett. Syd Barrett was what used to be the front man of the band before Roger Waters became the front man for almost the rest of their career. Anyway, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. It's a good album. Their first album, good stuff. I like it a lot. Anyway, moving on. Coming in at number 4, The Wall. Now, The Wall used to be my favorite, but not anymore. I'll get to my favorite in a minute. It was released in 1979. It's a rock opera, and the story was inspired not only by some experiences in during Roger Waters' childhood, but also as an incident in which Roger Waters spat in the face of a fan during one of their tours before this album, before 1979. And the story, this being a rock opera, it has a big sweeping epic story. It tells the story of a man named Pink, whose father dies in World War II, similarly to how Roger Waters' father died. And later in life, he suffers abuse from his school teachers, his mom, and his wife. And that causes him, each one of those traumas causes him to build a metaphorical wall around himself, isolating himself from the rest of the world. Some story elements also take inspiration from Syd Barrett, the aforementioned Syd Barrett, who went crazy after Pink Floyd's first 2 albums. Did a lot of drugs and lost his mind and stuff. Also, this is a bit of an Easter egg. There are 2 Easter eggs on this album that I know of. If you play the first song, the beginning of the very first song, and the very end of the last song on the album, you get a secret message. It says, "Isn't this where we came?" The first song, "In the Flesh," starts with "We Came In." The last song, I think it's called "Outside the Wall," the last song ends where "Isn't this where?" So, back to back. Isn't this where we came? And the second Easter egg is in another one of the songs. I think it's "Empty Spaces." The song "Empty Spaces." There is a message that is played in reverse. So if you play the message forwards, it's like it says
just discovered the secret message. Please send your answer to old Pink.
My favorite track on the album is "Comfortably Numb," mostly for David Gilmour's really, really awesome epic guitar solo in the middle of the song. And oh man, oh my goodness, David Gilmour is a guitar god. He's like up there with like Frank Zappa and the like. Also, I forgot to mention, there was a movie adaptation of this, which is insane, absolutely insane. And it has every song in the album. Every song in the album plays, and it tells the whole story of the album. And when the song "Comfortably Numb" plays, there's a cameo by none other than Bob Hoskins. And that's nice. It's nice. It's always good to see him in anything he's in. And also, there is a really, really excellent cover out there by Van Morrison and the band, which was used in the movie The Departed. Anyway, The Wall, number 4, good album. Not my favorite, but it's a good album nonetheless. Highly recommended. And coming in at number 3, "Wish You Were Here." Released in 1975, this album was composed as a tribute to Syd Barrett, who, like I said before, was the front man of Pink Floyd for their first 2 albums, until he did a lot of drugs and went crazy. Interestingly enough, Barrett actually visited the studio where Pink Floyd were recording the album, and he looked like a bum. He looked awful. He had shaved his head, he shaved his eyebrows, he shaved everything, every hair on his body, and he had gained a lot of weight. He was like fat and ugly, and the band didn't recognize him, almost didn't recognize him. But when they found out exactly who he was, they were devastated and astonished. And even Roger Waters, he broke down in tears when he found out what the state of Syd Barrett, what Syd Barrett had become. And it's kind of sad. what happened to Syd Barrett. My favorite track on the album. It's actually two tracks that bookend the album, called "Shine On You Crazy Diamond." That the songs themselves are actually tributes. The whole album is a tribute to Syd Barrett, but "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" in particular is like the biggest love letter to Syd Barrett that one could ever hear. But that's not the reason that I like it, although it is one of them. The biggest reason I like it is because when I was a teenager and when I first heard this album, it was like in middle school or something, and I heard the album, and at one point I had a dream about these aliens who were flying through space in their little spaceship. It looked like the spaceship that the Jetsons flew in. And there were these three aliens, and they were singing. They were singing this whole album by themselves. And for some reason, after I woke up, I said, "Space Zoomers. These guys are the Space Zoomers." And that's how I got the name of my YouTube channel. Also, it's probably, I think it's Pink Floyd's longest song that they've ever composed. Like, I think it's 23, 26 minutes, I can't remember. But, anyway, Wish You Were Here. Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, coming into the home stretch. Number 2, Animals. Now, Animals is a good special album to me. Very special. I got this years and years and years ago when I was a teenager. It was a gift from a personal trainer that I used to have at the YMCA. It was released in 1977 and loosely inspired by George Orwell's novel Animal Farm. Not a very long album, only like 5 tracks, but it's still epic and amazing to listen to. It also sparked some controversy. I mentioned this before. It sparked a little bit of controversy when the band were on tour promoting this album, performing it and stuff, and Roger Waters spat in the face of a fan, and that sparked like a bunch of controversy, and it inspired Roger Waters to write The Wall. And also, Les Claypool from the band Primus, he covered this album live. And he released it as an album called Live Frog Set 2, and I'm still trying to get my hands on that album because I've heard the covers of the songs on YouTube, and they're awesome. They're so awesome, and I'm just so bummed that the CD is out of print and not available at an affordable price on either eBay or Discogs, and oh man, I'm just so bummed about that. But anyway, my favorite track on this album is called Dogs, because for one thing, it's also an epic, long track. I'm seeing a pattern here. It's also a long track. It clocks in at 17 minutes. Every time I listen to it, I always imagine an elaborate music video in my head that plays from beginning to middle to end throughout the song. And it's a good song if you're listening to it on like a car ride or something. Also, another irrelevant, but I recommend if you're listening to long epic songs on long car rides, I recommend Jethro Tull's "Thick as a Brick" and "Supper's Ready" by Genesis. Anyway, also as I was writing down the notes for this list, I'm not doing a complete script for this. For this list, I'm just writing down notes and improvising on the spot. Off the cuff, doing something I don't like again. I was actually listening to Dogs as I was writing down the notes. Anyway, number 1, no question about it, gotta give it to Dark Side of the Moon. This album is just, oh man, some people might not get it, but those people are missing out. I bought this album, I think it was the first Pink Floyd album that I ever got, and oh man, no mistake about it, no bones about it. if you're getting into Pink Floyd, this is probably the first album you should get. I know I said at the beginning that this wasn't that kind of list, that I wasn't suggesting you buy any of these albums day one, but this album is really the first thing you should get if you want to get into Pink Floyd. It's like their magnum opus. It was released in 1973. It's one of the best-selling albums ever. Over 40 million copies have been sold. It inspired a radio drama written by Tom Stoppard, the writer of Shakespeare in Love and Brazil, which is one of my favorites. And its influence on the music industry and music in general cannot be overstated enough. So I'm just going to shut up about how great the album is and get on to my favorite track. It's not here. It's not on the back. It's called Time. And oh boy, time. Time enough at last. There was time now. The reason it's my favorite track, I can relate to the lyrics. I can totally relate to what's being said in the lyrics. Sometimes I feel stuck, just like the song says. I feel stuck, like I missed the starting gun, and I'm frittering away the hours in an off-end way. The lyric that really hits me the hardest is every year is getting shorter, never seem to find the time, plans that be have come to naught, but half a page of scribbled lines. And the reason that line hits me the hardest is because I have plans. I have plans in the future, but I don't know how to execute them. I don't know the first step of realizing those plans, to the point where the plans that I have are just fantasy. And if I don't realize those plans, the plans that I have, I feel that I'll just grow old without having accomplished anything and become shorter of breath and one day closer to death. And I don't want that. I really don't. Also, there's another passage in the book Pink Floyd and Philosophy. Careful with that axiom, Eugene. That's a great title, by the way. It mostly describes David Gilmour's guitar solo, which is another epic solo, by the way. In the middle of the song, which starts out like dark and moody, but then changes to open, hopeful, and even consoling. It's as if he were saying, "Don't feel bad. I missed the starting gun too. We all did." And that gives me just a little bit of comfort in knowing that I'm not the only one with problems, with problems, because I know I'm not. I know lots of people have it far worse than me. I know this because I've seen it. I've seen people reduced to tears because of problems with like abusive parents and racism and ableism, prejudice against handicapped people. And after seeing what they're going through, what people like them are going through, it's horrible, and I feel sorry for them. But in comparison, my problems seem like a cakewalk. And I know it's horrible to think that way, but I can't help it. It's just how I feel. I feel like I'm trivializing their problems by saying, "Oh, I don't have it so bad." And I know I shouldn't do that. But it's just something I do, something I'm doing, and I can't help it. But I just want to close this by saying, people, those people are still alive, and they're still doing stuff. They're still doing great and accomplishing their dreams. And if they can do it, and I can do it, and so can you. I don't think you can. I don't hope you can. I know you can. You want to do something? Do it. Period. That's it.